Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. In the very near future we will have the start of the first role lock competitive season with 222 being implemented. Not only that, those changes will come in onto the live servers with a few hero changes that I wanted to highlight in this video. We've spoken about Sigma, we've spoken about Brigitte. Now I want to focus on the smaller changes that are in this patch that might be more impactful than you may think. Either in the case of these changes make this hero a lot better or worse than you may think, but also some other changes that highlight a change in attitude from Blizzard that I feel could lead to a lot in the future. I wanted to start with one of the major changes first. This might seem really obvious to you, but there's some other things I want to mention. The global ultimate cost increase. It's gone up by 12%. The developer comments say the ultimates are coming up too often considering how high impact they are. We're reducing how quickly they are built, so less fights will be determined by ultimate usage. This is one of those changes where I brought it up with a friend of mine that I play Overwatch with, and he went, oh yeah, I forgot that that was even a thing, and I wanted to sort of go over it first, just in case that was also you that forgot that this change was coming into the game. But also, because this affects everybody, it's easy to assume that everybody loses out on this. But I think there's some heroes that are affected much more than others, especially the heroes that already have a high ultimate cost to be able to use them. It's a lot quicker for a Tracer to charge up Pulse Bomb than it is for Torbjorn to charge up Molten Core. Luckily, if you go over to the Overwatch wiki, you can see exactly how much these cost by then breaking it down into units. For example, the quickest ult that you could call is technically Baby D.Va getting her mech back, and that's a cost of 320. The highest ultimate cost is Lucio with Sound Barrier, but you can see the sort of top 5 to 10 heroes here and how much their ultimate costs in the column, and these heroes it's only going to get worse for. And there's definitely a trend of these ults costing more because they're high impact. The only weird ones are Moira, who can charge up her ultimate so quickly with the healing output that she has. So whilst it does take a lot of cost for her to get her ultimate, it's a lot easier for her to do it than somebody else. Sigma's not affected because he comes in with these changes, and Brigitte's getting reworked, so that's a bit of a change too. But heroes like Lucio, Torbjorn, Bastion, Soldier 76, Zenyatta, Ashe, are all affected because they already have a high ultimate cost rate. Lucio and Zenyatta especially, with how competitive the supports are right now. The next change I wanted to go over was Reinhardt's new passive Steadfast, which reduces knockback effects by 30%. To read the developer comments, as a frontline melee range tank, Reinhardt was more adversely affected by knockback abilities than most heroes. To reduce some of the frustration and enable Reinhardt to more easily fulfill his role, he is now more resistant to being knocked back. I feel that this change is overlooked because of the state that Reinhardt is in currently. He is just not a very meta pick. When Orisa Roadhog is very strong, Reinhardt is very weak because Orisa Roadhog's job is to make as much distance between their team versus the enemy team. If you're Reinhardt, you can only slowly move towards the incoming damage of Orisa Roadhog. They can easily break your shield. You're just an open target really for them, whereas Wrecking Ball and Winston can do more by getting out of the way, but typically you end up in this Orisa versus Orisa kind of meta that we have at the moment. So Reinhardt, just by definition, isn't very meta right now. However, these changes are just incredibly impactful for the hero. It doesn't do much for his state in the game, but it does so much when it comes to playing this hero. It doesn't make him devoid of CC, of course not, but it makes playing the hero less frustrating. And I'm sure most of us, when playing Reinhardt, having a good game, it feels great to have that sort of dynamic playstyle of putting up the shield, blocking a nerve shatter, slamming 6 of their teammates, pinning somebody, fire striking another, just swinging crazily to the point that you get another ultimate in like 30 seconds. That is a really fun, dynamic way of playing Reinhardt, as a person that used to main him like 2 years ago at this point. But the frustrating aspect was being punched by Doomfist into the Rialto Canal for the 5th time, and there's very little that you could do. There's just nothing that you could do in a lot of those cases, so at least now you have a bit more respite. The other reason why I feel that this is more impactful is regardless of Reinhardt's state in the meta, he's still a very popular pick. It's hard to say why. There could be a multitude of reasons. People in lower ranks thinking he is always good, people prefer playing him, people feeling that they could do more with Reinhardt than say Orisa or Winston. It's very easy to do stuff for your team because it's kind of like, I've got my shield up, everybody group up with me, so you can almost control the match like that. But certainly going across the last month, or even week, Reinhardt is still the most popular tank across the likes of gold, silver and below. But even in higher tiers, or across the board like I'm showing you on screen, Reinhardt isn't far behind the likes of Roadhog and Orisa in pick rate. His win rate's a bit worse, but not really by much. So this is more impactful for the reason that even though Reinhardt isn't very meta, it just makes him so much easier to play, less frustrating, but also because Reinhardt is still being played a lot, and no doubt going into a roll-up meta, regardless of how good he is, players will still pick him up and play him. One of the biggest, most impactful changes I think that's come in was to Tracer, who had her pulse bomb damage increased from 300 to 350. It's not impactful because it makes Tracer better, but it shows a change into Blizzard's attitude around some of these changes. For those that remember, Tracer's original damage on the pulse bomb was 350, but it was nerfed about a year and a bit ago, around the time that Brigitte was added into the game, give or take. Back then, Tracer's pulse bomb had the damage decreased from 350 to 300, so this is a revert and Blizzard going back on a previous nerf. They even say it themselves, Pulse Bomb was reduced in power some time ago to make sure it was not overly punishing to tanks, which are much easier to stick to bombs too. Now that Brigitte has been reverted, but I guess most importantly Goat's Comp is no longer a thing, they don't need to worry about some of these changes that they've made in the past. So now that Roll-Lock is being added into the game, they're going to make Tracer as strong as she once was, how she was meant to be. And I feel that this is important to highlight because there are other heroes in the game that Blizzard have nerfed because of the state of Goat's Comp, but can now revert now that Goat's Comp can no longer be made possible. Specifically changes to Lucio and Zenyatta. These were heroes that were nerfed with the utility that they could bring to their team, with the Discord Orb damage increase and the Lucio Speed Aura. Those were reduced and nerfed because of how strong Goat's Comp was. But now I would like to see Blizzard reverting these changes, now that it can no longer be exploited in the same fashion. And I'm thinking, or at least hoping, that now they're reverting changes to the likes of Tracer, that they will then go on to revert changes to Lucio and Zenyatta in a very similar fashion. So it's not specifically the changes here that I wanted to highlight, but more that Blizzard are now going, okay, now that Goat's Comp is no longer a thing, we can now go back and revert changes that we made to heroes in order to make them weaker during that meta. We can now go back and change heroes that were too strong in multi-DPS lineups, that were too strong in multi-tank lineups, because that can no longer be exploited in the same fashion. So that's why I feel that people are overlooking the Tracer Pulse Bomb change, because Blizzard have been stubborn in the past. They don't often go back on their word. Now they're starting to. I hope we can see a bit more. Symmetra is on this list even though she is still a bit up in the air. Just to go over the changes very quickly, the teleporter now lasts an infinite duration until it's destroyed. Players can destroy the teleporter with the ability to input. The cooldown now starts when the teleporter is destroyed, with the cooldown originally being increased to 15 seconds, but that was reverted so it's still 12 seconds. The maximum range has been increased from 25 meters to 30, and the teleporter breaks if the entrance is more than 40 meters from the exit. There was also a change to the reuse time, the time in which you press the button to teleport before you can teleport again. It was bumped up to 1.5 seconds, but after a lot of people complained it was too clunky, they again reverted that back to 1 second as it once was. A few people are saying that it's worse simply because the cooldown of the teleporter starts when the teleporter has been destroyed, therefore they have to wait a while, and it puts people off the aggressive playstyle of, say, putting a teleporter on point, teleporting everybody through it. Now you can't really do that anymore, but there are a few other ways that you can use it according to the Symmetra made subreddit. It seems now that a lot of the Symmetra players are warming up to these changes, giving examples on how it can be used. One of which is by leaving the teleporter basically in the spawn, like let's say on a control map, Symmetra puts it just before the point. It means that if anybody dies, they could use that teleporter because of its infinite duration to teleport back to the point. Like the old Symmetra teleporter ultimate, but on all of the time. So imagine how impactful that can be. That in itself is very strong, however of course it doesn't make using Symmetra's teleporter very interesting for the Symmetra player, because it's a case of set it up so we can get back from spawn quicker, you can't use it to do some really cool stuff. An example would be Hollywood Point A that came out of Fudbug, who said putting a teleporter on the high ground, having the base at the ground on the point and telling your team to hug it every time something bad happens, like when people dive in, they can all teleport up to the top and instantly drop back down. And compared it to everybody just having a Tracer blink. So I do think that this is going to be an overtime glacial change as players get used to the new Symmetra, but I feel that there is definitely a hidden strength here now with how quickly she could get people back into the fight, especially on control points, but other interactions like I just mentioned on Hollywood. That is where I feel that Symmetra's teleporter duration can become very obnoxious if you don't destroy it or just deal with it in any fashion. And lastly, a lot of people forgot that Sombra does have nerfs coming on the PTR too. The duration of a hacked target has gone down from 6 seconds to 5, which isn't much, and the wind-up time for her to be able to use EMP has increased, meaning that there's a little bit more time for you to be able to stun her, sleep her, to interrupt the EMP as it's coming in. Patch notes say hack is a potent disable with a long duration. Reducing that duration slightly will make it feel less oppressive as the hacked player without reducing its effectiveness. Decreased cast time on EMP allows for more time to react and opens up more counterplay for the opposing team. I like these changes quite a lot, mostly because Sombra is a very weird hero. She is incredibly strong, as we highlighted in a Tavik video, but of course most of us know Sombra in even Masters and below isn't as good. She has one of the lowest win rates across all of the tiers, but definitely the lowest win rate in every single tier going down to bronze. So she's very, very good at the 1% highest margin, but not very good really anywhere else, or at least not as good outside of the top 500. So these changes don't really make her worse, but it does make the lives of the players against the Sombra just a little bit easier and less frustrating. You're hacked for less time overall, and also if you are skillful or the Sombra player on the enemy team is just bad, you can sleep or interrupt flashbang a Sombra that's doing a really obvious EMP. You don't have much extra time, it's not like a couple more seconds, but it gives you a little bit more counterplay there on a hero that infamously can just hack you and there's very little that you can do about it. There's other changes maybe coming to Sombra in the future, I would hope, but Blizzard are in this difficult spot where they need to nerf how strong she is at the top level, whilst also making her a bit more optimal outside of the top 500, which I think is a fair assessment of the hero, right? But yep, those changes are the ones that I wanted to go over: the global ultimate increase, the steadfast change to Reinhardt, Blizzard reverting some of the changes specifically to Tracer, new Symmetra and Sombra nerfs on the way. All of these changes I really do think are more impactful than people may be giving them credit for, so I wanted to talk about them before they went to live. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, we'll see you next time.